Very good then. Welcome everyone to the monthly meeting of the City of Sandy Planning Commission. Today's date is Monday, February 27, 2023. And, this is a hybrid meeting, meaning that it is held partially in person by some commissioners here and some are in on Zoom, as will be testimony and reports and so forth also on Zoom. So we'll begin with a, and I'll give instructions later on about how to get recognized to make a comment. But we'll start with a roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Wegener.
Here.
Commissioner Ramsayer.
Here.
Commissioner Pullen.
Here.
Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Hook.
Here.
Commissioner Myram. And Chair Crosby.
Here. Well, we have one of our two new commissioners with us this evening, and we do want to welcome Christina to our group. We appreciate being willing to serve in this capacity. I hope it's a enjoyable, educational, and satisfying opportunity with us.
Thank you.
And don't be bashful to speak up, even as a first time on the.
Thank you so much.
All right, we had in our packets the minutes from our last meeting, January 30th, 2023. Anybody have any changes or additions that need to be made to those minutes? Okay, I don't see or hear anything, so we will deem the minutes approved as presented. If you want to give testimony in this meeting, and I will say this probably 2 or 3 times in the course of the evening. If you're on Zoom and you want to participate when it's time for public testimony, just click that raised hand button and then wait to be recognized. If you're on the telephone, you do *9, and that will effectively raise your hand, and then just wait to be recognized for your testimony. From there, we'll move on to the director's report, which was in our packet. You have anything to add, Kelly? Or
Yeah, I do actually. Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up here.
Yeah.
So we've been very busy, even with the moratorium in place. We're still processing applications that were submitted prior to the moratorium being in place, like the one before you tonight. We have a lot of long-range planning still going on. As you can see with the upcoming meetings list, we have a few joint work sessions with the City Council on the comprehensive plan and TSP in April. So if you can attend those meetings, that'd be great. The comprehensive plan, that will be the first of 3 joint work sessions that the Planning Commission will have with the council over the next 6 to 8 months before adoption, about a year from now. The TSP, this is kind of the one last work session, and then it's going to be before you in May for a recommendation for approval or modifications, and then to council in June for hopefully adoption. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that as I put in the director's report, one of our staff members decided to leave for another employment opportunity a couple weeks ago. So we have a pretty small staff to begin with, and so that put us down 1 person. And then Emily, just a couple weeks after that, decided to take a job with the City of Portland. So, and she'll be presenting a few items tonight, but so that puts us down 2. We only have I think a 6-person staff right now. So a third of our employees. We used to have 7 employees, but one of them was never backfilled. So we're we're going to be real lean for the next few months. So, I've sent out some information to the community, and I hope that people realize that it's going to take us longer to process permits and reply to inquiries. On the plus side of that, Marisol's position, we do already have applications in for that. And we're going to be interviewing, I think, 8 people in a couple weeks here. So we're hopeful we'll have that actually filled in April. So, and then as you saw in the report, there's just a lot of updates on all the projects that we're working on. So I don't know if you have any questions for me or not.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but just a thank you to both Emily and Marisol for their work for the city. And a little bit of excitement that I'll get to continue working with Emily.
Okay. Well, our city council liaison is not here. I don't see him listed in there, and I know he's not in the room, so we'll skip over that and go ahead and move right into our new business. We have 2 public hearings this evening. The first one is legislative in nature. The second one is quasi-judicial in nature. And we will open the first public hearing at 6:39 p.m. This is file 22-052, the water system master plan adoption. And what our role is on this one is to, after hearing the presentation and our discussion, is we pass it on to City Council with our approval, not approval, recommendations, things like that. You're familiar with it. They make the final vote on it. Okay, any abstentions from any of the hearing body? Yeah, I don't see any. Any conflicts of interest? The fact that we all use water, I guess. Okay, I don't see anything under there, and we'll move right from there to the staff report.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so I'm going to go over just a brief background about the adoption of the water system master plan, and then I believe AJ is there and he'll be able to kind of go into more detail about the actual plan itself. I'm just going to do kind of a higher level overview of the adoption portion of it. So we're looking at adopting the water system master plan, and this is tied to Oregon statewide planning goal 11, which pertains to public facilities and services and requires cities and counties to develop and adopt a public facilities plan for areas in a UGB that have populations of 2,500 or greater. So the public facilities plan is a support document or documents to the comp plan, and that describes the water, sewer, and transportation facilities that are just to support the land uses designated in the comp plan. So as part of this adoption, we're looking at the adopting the 2022 water system master plan, which will be the water system component of the public facilities plan. And this complies with the water system master planning requirements that are established in the Oregon Administrative Rule pertaining to public water systems. The 2016 Water Management and Conservation Plan will be adopted as an addendum to the 2022 Water System Master Plan. And this is also in compliance with another Oregon Administrative Rule that pertains to water management and conservation plans. As part of the adoption, there will be some code amendments to the municipal code, specifically Title 13, which pertains to water and sewer, and then Title 17, which is the development code. And these will be updated to include specific references to both the 2022 Water System Master Plan and the 2016 Water Management and Conservation Plan. So the Title 13 amendments are included as part of this application. The Title 17 amendments will be included with the Clear and Objective Code Audit, which is expected to be adopted later this year. And so we submitted the following notices of the adoption and code amendments and submitted to the DLCD in January, published it in the Sandy Post in February, and then posted it to the city's social media page last week. And staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission hold the hearing tonight, seek public input, and forward a recommendation of approval to City Council. And that is the brief staff report, but I will hand it over to AJ, who can go over the actual content of the plans a little bit more.
Hi, everybody. I'm AJ Thorne. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director. Thanks for having me here tonight. Basically, a quick high level of our master plan. Good news is our conveyance system is actually sized pretty well for us. We have a few fire flow issues throughout the system, but nothing major there. The treatment and water creation side of things is a little more tricky, as you probably, if you've read through this, you've seen that we will need to create a connection to the new filtration plant, and we will need to upgrade Alder Creek, as well as perform a siting study for reservoirs throughout the city to determine the best location for a new reservoir or two. Other than that, we were able to work through this plan over the last few months here and whittle down our peak demands, which leads to a system where we're not oversizing for water that we're never going to use. Other than that, I'd like to just open up to questions. I'm sorry I didn't put a presentation together for you guys tonight.
Questions, anybody? Or observations? Speaking the one thing that came to my mind as I looked at it, and I pulled up the map again just to confirm correctly. And this isn't really a correct question so much as a critique or critique, but the master plan, at least on the pictures of all the where pipes and so forth are going to go, doesn't have anything in the outside the city limits, but within the urban growth. I'm thinking, 10 years from now, this plan goes for, what was it?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
So 10 years from now, there'll be development into those areas that are not developed now.
Yeah, and to address that, basically, the backbone of the conveyance is there to serve those developments that come in and everything. So generally, the proposed development would show the water lines in that area. So we're not going to prescribe like how a neighborhood's laid out unless there is a conveyance, a larger pipe that would need to go through that. And out on the fringes of town, we usually don't have anything that needs to get further out. So I agree that it kind of looks like we've left some dead spots there, and that's not our intent. So
No, I mean, it makes sense that you do it within the current city limits, but I was just somewhere, whole sections.
totally understand.
And well, I can understand though that part of it is you don't know what's going to be there. And so you don't know what to put on the map until you know what's there.
Exactly. Yep. And like I said, if there was something major that would be required in an area, it would be covered in these maps, at least one of them.
I think it would be similar to like in the TSP, we don't put local streets. I think it'd be similar to that.
Exactly.
Like individual development applications dictate local street connectivity. I think it'd be similar to
Yep,
that, right?
exactly.
But the plan, when the plan was doing and projecting, was the possibility of further growth outside the current city limits part of the.
Exactly. The last segment of the plan, so the build out component would be the entire urban growth going to be filled out to its zoning potential. So that we use that to develop the demand of water and then make sure our system can handle it, basically.
You have one hand raised. Sure.
Okay, that's Commissioner Lee.
Yes, a number of cities now are putting I'm not sure what that noise is. Is that on my side?
Yeah, you sound fine on our side.
Oh, okay. So a number of cities are putting small hydro development within their pipelines when you do new construction work. And so I'm wondering with the great drop in altitude that we have in our system, why that would not be a good thing for us to consider doing and to have something in our plan to look at how that could work, what it would cost, because it would bring needed revenue back to the city.
As a big fan of hydroelectric energy, I agree with you completely. Our runs coming down from our treatment up at Alder Creek and Brownell Springs do have quite a bit of elevation. There will be a point in the future where we are hardening the backbone coming down the hill to us, basically. So we'd be improving those pipes, rehabilitating those pipes. That'd be the time that we'd look at that and see if there's any ability for us to generate some power there. And then with the location of that, we'd have to determine if there was any use for us to generate power or if it's just lighting a light on the side of 26, I think would be key there. I hear you and I agree with you. And it's just not something that we addressed in this master plan. We can look at it in our update, definitely though.
Right, I appreciate that as long as it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Other comments? Right, well, we will move on to public testimony. And as we often do with legislative ones, and also seeing the huge crowd that we have here this evening, and both in the room and on Zoom, we'll just open the comments to whether you are in favor of the plan or you're opposed to it, or you just have some neutral testimony, just some general comments about it. Just again to review, if you're on Zoom and you want to make a comment during this part, which is a public testimony segment, hit the raised hand button and that will then wait to be recognized. If you're on the phone, it's *9 that will raise your hand and then wait to be recognized. So we'll just open the floor for public testimony, not any particular order. If you're for it, if you're against it, or just have comments.
And just to reiterate, it's only for the water master plan, not the other agenda item.
Right.
I just want to make
yeah.
sure people
We're in the
understand
public
that.
hearing
Yeah.
for the water. Yeah. We would have figured that one out pretty quick.
If you're here to speak about State Street homes, then you wouldn't want to comment at this point.
Right.
I don't see any attendees with their hands raised. I think I recognize most of the names for the next hearing.
Okay.
Just so you know. 15 or well, actually less than that because these two are on Zoom and the council chamber. So 12 people about.
All right. Well, I think we've given ample time for anybody to make a comment. So we will move on. I don't know if either Emily or you have a recap or anything else to say other than that.
I think that's it. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Let's go ahead and close the public hearing at this time.
Chair, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Who was
It's
that?
been moved and seconded. I think that was Commissioner Hook. To close the public hearing at 6:52 p.m. All right. Any concerns, questions? Pass it on to City Council as is. Everybody's quiet.
You're just waiting on a motion.
Then I'll go ahead and move that we forward a recommendation of approval to the city council.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to forward the water master plan on to city council for their final decision with our recommendation that it be approved. Roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Wagner,
Aye.
Commissioner Ramsar,
Aye.
Commissioner Poulin,
Agree.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes,
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
and Chair Crosby.
Yes. Motion carried. We're going to city council.
Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
You don't need to stay any longer if you don't want to.
Good luck tonight, everybody.
Okay. Is there a way that I can get the Zoom screen up here to be the since I can't do anything to it, so I see everybody instead of or just the speaker. Okay.
That's the limitation that I can get to that on the left one. You can see
Well,
that
I've
there's,
got-
you see that this little button, it shows how many people are in it, but I don't think you can click.
Keep my eyes over here. Call my attention that somebody raised a hand that I'm not seeing. All right, we will move into our second and final public hearing. This is a quasi-judicial public hearing. We will open it at 6:55 PM. This is file number 22-031. Design review, variance tree, State Street Homes, mixed use development. Are there any abstentions from anybody on the planning commission? See anything? Any conflicts of interest to declare?
Oh, you have one hand raised.
They can just speak, right?
yes. I just wanted to indicate that a friend of mine had asked about the hearing, and I said, you need to go to the city staff and talk with them or look at documents online. And we didn't have any further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any ex parte contact?
I've driven by the site quite a many of times.
Yeah. Anybody sneak a Google Earth view? Kind of an inside joke.
Yeah, what is that?
We've been told by our attorney that even a Google Earth thing that I do at home, on a planning, things coming before the planning commission, is ex parte contact and it needs to be declared. That's all, it's just a matter of declaring it. So. All right, any challenges to any members of the planning commission on this public hearing? Anything? Not really. I'm sorry. I hate to be that way, but we're in a public hearing that has state mandated steps. All right. Again, when we get to the testimony part, to raise your hand, hit the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your phone. If you testify, you must raise all issues you wish to address at this hearing. If your issue is not raised at this hearing, you may not be able to raise it later in any appeal. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Any party may request that the hearing be continued to a later date, or that the record remain open after the hearing is closed. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. With that, we will move to the staff report. And I have one comment. Emily, you have a lot of heavy lifting to do in this report. I appreciate all the work that you had to do on it.
Thanks.
Floor is yours.
All right. So tonight we're looking at a State Street Homes mixed-use development project. And as Chair Crosby mentioned, this is a design review, variances, and tree removal. So just a quick vicinity map so everybody knows where we are at. The property, it's 2 tax lots north of Highway 26 and west of Bluff Road. And that dotted blue line you see is also a proposed private off-site stormwater extension that I'll show in a little more detail in a few slides, but put it here so that you can kind of see the vicinity, and that would connect up to Meeker. Just zooming in quickly. So on the left, we have tax lot 1000, which is the existing Paola's Pizza Barn. And on the right is tax lot 902, and that's where the proposed mixed use development would go. So the proposal so on tax lot 902 is mixed use development with ground floor commercial, which would be self-service storage units, and then 3 floors of residential above with a total of 42 units. And then other site amenities, the typical ones you see like parking, landscaping, shared outdoor recreation area. And then on tax lot 1000, which is the existing Paola's Pizza Barn, the proposal would include reconfiguring the parking lot and then also relocating the existing driveway, which would be a shared access drive for both lots. So here's the overall site plan that was originally submitted. And it shows again on the right, the new building and the new proposed parking that would be part of the mixed use development. And the left is the Paola's Pizza with some reconfigured parking to the rear. And we did reach out to the applicant and point out a few issues with the site plan that we wanted to see addressed potentially, so that you could have so that the Planning Commission could review that tonight as well. And so here is the revised plan that they sent, and I circled the main differences in red here. And staff did not have a chance to review this as we just received it a couple weeks ago. The main issue though, which is circled kind of in the middle there to the south of the building, is that there is an existing public sewer line. And so it requires a 15-foot easement. And the original plan was not showing that. So with that, the building needing to shift north, it affected, of course, parking. The parking spaces were also shown 2 feet shorter than a standard space for almost all of them. And so that needed to be updated as well. So this kind of just shows removal of some of the parking and relocating in other places, and then also like reconfiguring the parking in front of the Paola's Pizza, which was not really to code. So there's, again, we didn't have time to do a deep dive into this, but this is just kind of showing how the site could be potentially be reconfigured to accommodate that required 15-foot easement for the public sewer line. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's also some off-site private stormwater line extension proposal. And so the image on the left shows kind of a close-up of the north parking lot on the Paola's Pizza Barn, and then the west side of the parking lot on the proposed mixed-use development. And you can see the stormwater line exiting the mixed-use development site and then heading north through the property to the north. And then the image on the right shows that full extension all the way up to Meeker Street. As far as we know, that there hasn't been an easement secured from the property owner to the north at this point, but this would be a private stormwater extension line. So the review that we're looking at tonight, it's a type 3 design review, and then there are 4 requested variances. 3 of them are special variances to the wall and fence height, and then 1 is a variance to the minimum tree retention standards. And I'll go through each of those in more detail. So the 4 variances, again, the first 3 are to wall height. The first one is to exceed the 4-foot maximum height of a wall and fence in a commercial front yard, which is the south side of the site. And then the next 2 are exceeding the 8-foot maximum in a commercial rear yard, which is the north side, and side yard on the east side. And then that 4th variance is a type 3 variance to tree retention standards in accordance with section 17-102-70. So looking at the 3 wall fence height variance requests, this image just shows where those walls are located. So on the south side is the front yard wall, and then on the north side is the rear yard wall, and then that wall wraps around to the east side, which would be the side yard. So first, looking at the front yard wall fence, they're requesting to exceed the 4-foot maximum height, and the site plan shows it as a approximately 7-foot tall wall, and then the grading and erosion control plan includes a stairs grading detail that shows it as a 5-foot tall wall. And in either case, the wall has a guardrail that's 3.5 feet on top of it. So looking at kind of the analysis of the proposal, the retaining wall is needed due to the existing topography of the site. And that's what's stated in the narrative. The guardrail would be needed for safety so that people don't fall off the wall. As I pointed out, the wall height is shown differently on the site plan versus the grading and erosion control plan. In this case, for this wall along the south property line, the wall and guardrail will be visible from the subject property itself, but only the guardrail would be visible from the property to the south. And there is actually an existing hedge that will remain on the property to the south, so it might not be fully visible, but it basically drops down, the stairs drop down into the subject site. And then also just note that the property to the south is zoned commercial, which would allow an 8-foot tall wall and fence combined in the rear yard. So moving on to the wall in the rear yard on the north side, the site plan shows the wall as a approximately 12-foot tall wall. And then the applicant included a sheet of wall cross sections. And one of the wall cross sections there you can see circled in the middle around what they're calling station 1+00.0 is showing that wall height at 14.9 feet. And again, this wall would have a 3.5-foot guardrail on top of it. And the wall on the east side, on the side yard, is shown as an approximately 8-foot tall wall in the composite site plan. And then the wall cross sections, you can see just before the wall turns the corner. So this is still on the north side. It's at 11.75 feet. And then it turns the corner heading south along that east property line. And the next station that's shown is 7.55 feet tall. So it kind of decreases in height as it makes as it rounds the corner. And again, the wall has the 3.5-foot guardrail on top. So a little analysis on the rear and side yard wall fences. So again, the walls are needed due to the existing topography. The guardrail needed for safety. Again, the wall heights are shown differently on the site plan versus the wall cross sections. And then the wall and guardrail will be visible from the adjacent properties to the north and east, which are both zoned commercial. And then it will also be visible from Bluff Road. And then the 4th variance is a request to not meet the minimum tree retention standards. And based on the combined acreage of the 2 subject properties, the required retention trees would be 7, And what they're proposing is to retain one tree, which is circled there in green. It's tree number 28 along the east property line. So looking a little bit deeper into this, the third-party arborist review included this image here on the right, and that shows all the trees whose tree numbers are highlighted in green are actually off-site. They're on the property to the south or east. And then the ones highlighted completely in yellow are the 6 trees that meet the minimum tree retention standard. So 11 inches diameter or breast height or greater, healthy and healthy trees. So those 6 are shown in the list on the left there. And then there's also 4 additional trees that are close to meeting the tree retention standards. So they're either just under 11 inches diameter or breast height, but in good condition, or are over 11 inches, but in fair condition. And so of those 10 trees, as you can see, a majority are in the area along Highway 26. That's the current landscape buffer area. And then there are a few, there are 2 retention trees and 1 potential candidate in the middle of the site that would obviously be impacted by development of the site. So this shows that existing landscape buffer along Highway 26. Some of the trees in the back that you see that are taller are actually on that property to the east, but most of the ones in the foreground, or all the ones in the foreground, are on the subject property, most of which are in the flag portion of tax lot 902, and then a couple of them, you can see those palm trees there, are in the Paola's Pizza Barn tax lot. So one of the main issues with, or reasons why the trees are being removed, is that ODOT is recommending relocating the access further east so that the access straddles the shared property line. And we reached out to them to get more information on this recommendation, and they responded saying they were having issues where they had a shared access with the access strictly on one parcel, and then having owners of that parcel block the access for the other one. And so they were recommending relocating the access, the shared access to the shared property line, which is where the landscape buffer currently is. And we also would like to note that, of course, a shared access agreement or shared access easement would be required to be recorded regardless of where the driveway would be located. So whether it's at the existing shared access or the relocated shared access. And so the main issue from the staff perspective is that relocating the access actually brings the subject property out of compliance with multiple development code sections. So 1790-00C2, this is a list in our design review chapter of the Sandy style elements. And so C2 is that protecting and enhancing Sandy's tree canopy, particularly along the Highway 26 landscape management corridor, is specifically listed as a Sandy style element. 1790-120F requires parcels abutting Highway 26 to provide a landscape buffer that comprises no less than 30% of the highway frontage. And so currently, like that, the landscape buffer, so currently the site is in compliance with this, but removing that landscape buffer would bring it out of compliance, and then it would have to be relocated elsewhere. 1792-10C requires significant plants and trees to be preserved to the greatest extent practicable and integrated into the design of development. And then 17-102-50A is our minimum tree retention standard, which is at least 3 trees 11 inches diameter, breast height or greater, are required to be retained for every contiguous acre of ownership. And then finally, section 1790-00D1 states that excessive tree removal and or grading that may harm existing vegetation in a designated landscape conservation area is an element incompatible with Sandy style. And again, this landscape buffer along Highway 26 is a designated landscape conservation area that meets the requirements for the landscape buffer. So the overall recommendation tonight is that the Planning Commission approve the mixed-use development and parking lot reconfiguration with the conditions outlined in the staff report. Regarding the 3 wall and fence height variance recommendations, we are recommending approval, but we are recommending that you ask the applicant to submit clarification on the height of the walls so that you can make an accurate recommendation or an accurate approval of how tall of a wall you would permit with the 3.5-foot guardrail on top. And as part of that, we would like you to review the public testimony that's already been submitted and anything that you hear tonight as well in helping make that determination. And then finally making a determination on the maximum wall height that you would support with the 3.5-foot guardrail on top in a rear yard, side yard, and front yard. And then if in the front yard, which is along the south side, it is just a 5-foot wall with a 3.5-foot guardrail, we would just recommend approving it at that. With the tree variance, we're recommending that you determine whether or not you want to grant the variance to the tree retention standards. And then in making that determination, we're recommending that you review the existing and proposed driveway locations, keeping in mind both ODOT's recommendation and the city's development code requirements, particularly those sections that I already outlined, and the tree retention requirements as well. And if you do decide to grant the variance to the minimum tree retention standards, we recommend that you determine the minimum number of retention trees that you would like to be retained on the site. And then also that any new landscaping on the property be native or water efficient species and consistent with that, the conservation benchmarks in the city's 2016 Water Management and Conservation Plan, which was the previous item. So that concludes the staff report.
Yeah, and I'll just add a few words to that. So as you'll see there, as you pointed out, Chair, it's a very complex staff report that Emily put together. Probably one of the more complex ones I've seen since I've worked here. It was a great send off for Emily. That's like one of the last ones she got to work on. So there's a lot of moving pieces. So, you know, obviously next you'll hear from the applicant, and then you'll hear from the public, and then you'll hear some rebuttal from both staff and the applicant. After that, I know you're aware of this, but just for newer commissioners, you know, you guys have multiple options on how to proceed tonight. And so you could move forward with the decision with conditions, or you could delay a decision if you want more information from the applicant before making a decision, or you could, you know, deny it. You know, based on the use meeting the requirements of that zone, and based on the information they submitted, I would recommend not a straight up denial. But you know, that's your decision as a commission, how you want to proceed. But so you don't even have to make a decision tonight if you feel like there's not enough in the record to give you, you know, to make you feel good enough on some of the items, and to see if they've satisfied those items or not, because there is a lot. You know, it's a 68-page staff report. It's a big one to look through. So I just wanted to add that.
The one question I have, and I'll give opportunity if there's any quick questions anybody on the commission has of staff, is the self-storage, or are the self-storage units there just for tenants in the apartment?
No, so that would be a commercial use open to the public. And I should mention that this predates, we recently passed some code changes eliminating self-service storage, but this application was submitted well before that, so it doesn't apply to that. But these would be public, commercial used. Each apartment unit would have its own storage as required by the code.
Anybody else have a quick question? If not, we'll move on to the applicant's presentation. And how many do we have?
Well, so I don't know who's going to be speaking on their behalf. So maybe if they could, if every individual on the applicant side that's going to have a speaking role during their presentation could raise their hand, and I will temporarily promote them to panelists. It looks like just one for
Just
now.
one. Okay, we will turn it over to the applicant. And if you can, I suspect things are going to go long tonight. If you can keep it to 15, 20 minutes would be wonderful. But the floor is yours.
Yes, the unmute.
And as I will say with anybody on public testimony, give us your name and your address for the record.
This is Mark Wilde with State Street Homes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Thank you, commissioners, and appreciate Emily's fantastic staff report on that. So I'm Mark Wilde. I'm a principal with State Street Homes. We're the developer builder for this project. My address is 30688 Southeast Country Living Lane in Boring, 97009. And I'll keep this brief because, like I said, Emily did a fantastic job laying it out. But I did want to at least just recap a few of the important details for this project. Then I'm going to defer some time to our design professional, Mercedes with Studio 3, if she has anything to add from the design and code requirements and any response that we have. I'll start by just recapping what the project is. It's on a parcel that we're purchasing. It's 1.46 acres adjacent to Paola's Pizza. It is a flag lot, minimal access to Highway 26. We're proposing 42 residential units on 3 residential floors, and those break down to 32 one-bedroom apartments and 10 two-bedroom apartments. We're proposing an additional 65 storage units, which we just spoke about, commercial storage units. And those range in size from 5 by 10 to 10 by 15, with some 10 by 10 units mixed in there. I believe at this point, we're proposing 73 parking spaces, which exceeds the requirement for this size building, and also an additional 42 bike parking spaces. I think Emily talked about, we are proposing the required outdoor recreation area, which includes a gazebo area, an outdoor fire pit, and a dog park. We also are proposing the required enclosed garbage structure, meets the design requirements. I don't remember if we talked about the zoning, but this is a C2 general commercial zoning, and the project that we're proposing does fit within the criteria of that zoning. We talked a little bit about the shared access easement. So although we have a flagpole for this property that does meet Highway 26, we're following ODOT's recommendation for the indenture to move that access, and they've requested that we share or split the access from Highway 26 with Paola's Pizza. So as you guys saw on that access proposal, it straddles that flagpole line, and that meets exactly where ODOT is recommending and approving the indenture to move that access. And I think Emily outlined pretty well why they're requiring that, and with some of the issues that they've had in the past. We are aware that it does trigger some of these variances that we're asking for when it comes to tree retention, as well as the buffer. However, we are proposing to try to meet some of those things, and I'll try to give Mercedes a chance to answer to that. But I believe that we are agreeing to all of the staff's recommendations. And I think that we've met a lot of them with that update that she brought. The last thing that Emily touched on was we do have a proposed storm easement that does go through private property. We have not secured that easement to date. However, we have had quite a few conversations with the landowner, who is amicable about it and is willing to sell us an easement. We've just been waiting for final design and final approval before we presented the final easement request and negotiated that, but we don't believe that there will be any issues with that as it comes. And with that, I will defer to my design professional, Mercedes, with Studio 3, if she's still attending, if there's anything that she wants to add in regards to how we're meeting the staff requested changes. So I'm going to wait and see if she's still on and she'd like to raise her hand.
I'm promoting your two panelists right now.
Okay, Mercedes, we're ready.
All right, my name is Mercedes Butchess. I'm with Studio 3 Architecture. My address is 5424 Verda Lane, Northeast Kaiser, Oregon. And just to touch base on what Mark was mentioning in regards to the ODOT shared access, if the planning commissioner, your body decides to accept the current access easement in the location that Mark had described, being centered on the joint property line between the two tax lots, there is room towards the southwest portion of tax lot 1000, which is the tax lot that Paola Pizza Barn is on, that would have room to provide the landscape buffer that is required. Granted, it will be new planting and new trees to meet those standards for the landscape buffer, but there is room to do that if the current proposed ODOT easement access that we're showing is what is accepted. But other than that, Emily did a fantastic job of outlining how the project has met or been in compliance with all of the development codes. So thank you, Emily.
So with that, this is Mark Wilde, and I think that's pretty much wraps up as far as our presentation from the applicant side. So we'll go ahead and open it for whatever the next step is for the commissioners.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move right into public testimony. And in this public hearing, we will have it in 3 separate slots. We will begin with testimony in favor of the proposal. And then we'll ask for testimony that are not in favor and are against the proposal. And finally, if you're here tonight and you're neither for it or against it, but you have a comment, an observation, or something like that, you will have your opportunity at the end, the third group. And again, if you're on the Zoom call and you want to give testimony, click the raised hand icon, wait to be recognized. If you're on the telephone, it is *9, and then wait to be recognized. For anybody who gives testimony, please begin with giving us your name and your address. For the record, if you're in the room here, we ask that you step to the podium, which gets your voice onto the mic and onto the record, which helps. So with no further ado, we will open the floor to public testimony in favor of this proposal.
I don't see any hands raised on Zoom either.
Right, nothing heard or seen. So we will move on to testimony that is against this proposal.
Just come up to the podium, please.
Yep. You get to be front and center.
Okay,
Give us your name and your address.
yes, my name is Elizabeth Kitsoulis, and I live at 38105 Highway 26, right next to Paola Pizza Barn. My grandfather was Ed Bruns. He was the first mayor of Sandy, and he built the house that we're living in nearly 100 years ago, 98 years ago. So the house has historical value, and it also has sentimental value for me and my family. The 55-foot tall proposed building will be practically in our backyard. So whatever little privacy we had will disappear. I understand that we live in a commercial zone, but it seems to me that with houses surrounding this building, there should be a much lower height limit. A main concern for me also is the amount of traffic that will be attempting to merge onto Route 26. It has been difficult for me to get out on the highway, and I can only imagine that the number of cars from 42 families trying to enter the highway with a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit could be a very dangerous situation and cause even more congestion in Sandy. If this proposal comes to pass, I would hope at the very least that they would save as many trees as possible, those near the highway on Paola's side of our fence and the beautiful fir trees in the field. The other problem I see with the plan is that there needs to be an adequate space between our property and the monstrous building for fire safety reasons. I realize that Sandy wants to grow, but there also needs to be respect for the green open spaces. There are so few of them left in this town.
Thank you.
Can I get your last name spelled so I can?
Yeah, it's KITSOULIS.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Dennis Petros. I live at 17115 Bluff Road in Sandy. I'm on the northeast part of the lot, part of their lot. My concerns primarily, of course, have to do with the wall that's going to go up right behind my house. I want to at the very least ask for some more time to review a complete plan set or something that is a little more accurate than what they submitted. There is one section that they provided, but it doesn't really detail what it is that they are planning to do there. The heights aren't accurate or consistent, and it's not predictable. It's difficult to make comments from the public's point of view when there are such limited drawings available. It is kind of what I do for a living, and I was looking through them, and it's not really that consistent. The line that they've used to show where that retaining wall is, it's a line width, so you don't actually, there's no thickness there to try to read where the wall plans to be. But if it is where it is on the drawings, then there is no room, for instance, for a construction worker, if they used snap ties or something like that to build this wall, there's no room for an individual to walk between my fence, that retaining wall, to remove the snap ties. The constructability of that wall is, without damaging or coming onto my property, is nearly impossible. The toe of that retaining wall, if it is a retaining wall, not an eco-block wall, would require, that toe would require to come onto my property if it is where it is right now, and they've not said anything to me about it. So just the general lack of completeness, it's difficult to make comments on stuff like that when there's just not good details in there. There's also drainage issues behind a retaining wall when, and again, we don't know what they're planning to do there. There is storm drainage that they've outlined underneath the parking structure for runoff through that impermeable surface. But through cracks and joints and wear and tear on the concrete, between the concrete joints and the asphalt, there will be water that gets entrained into that soil, that non-native soil that they plan to bring in. That water needs to go somewhere, and it will stack up behind that retaining wall. Normally, when you would design a retaining wall, there are weep holes, and that weep hole will allow that head to get relief. So that would typically just drain down the non-soil side of that retaining wall. Well, I'm on that non-soil side of that retaining wall, and there's no way to determine whether or not, there's no way to determine what they plan to do with that water. So I just ask that we at least consider that. I have more time to review what they actually plan to do in my backyard, if not right on my property line. And that we consider, all this non-native soil that they're bringing in, where they're getting it, how they're resourcing it. Even the construction of bringing in dry soil and the dust and the sediment deposits that are inevitably going to happen. I'm downhill of that construction, so that runoff is going to come, and it's sure silt fences will help with this. But generally speaking, I've been around construction for a little while, and silt fences aren't very well mended, and they're not looked after. And then I'm right there, and I'm nervous about what's going to happen, what's going to end up in my backyard. And there's no plan whatsoever about that. They haven't, the drawings I saw online, there isn't a plan whatsoever for that. And certainly not to satisfy my mind anyway. I'm worried about the congestion on 26 too. I leave from Mount Hood Athletic Club every morning, and I try to make that left-hand turn back to my house, and it is congested usually even at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's that road is gonna be even more congested, and that those turns, if they have to make a left-hand turn into it's a stopped area, like there's a stoplight right there, so they're gonna have to make a left-hand turn into an area that's already potentially backed up, especially on weekends. So that's I don't know, that seems like a poor decision on ODOT's part to allow that. So I've submitted my comments online, the written comments. They're mostly to do with the wall and the drainage and what's going to happen to the soil and the deposits in my backyard, and the lack of detail. I can't submit. It's difficult to submit complete comments and accurate ones when the detail and the drawings aren't there, and they're inconsistent. As I think, what's her name? Emily. Thank you. Sorry, Emily, you're still on. Her and I have talked on the phone, and it's pretty inconsistent. So it's difficult to make good solid comments on that stuff. So anyway, I'd at least ask for some more time, and I appreciate you guys hearing us. So have a good night.
Nobody else on Zoom?
No, not that we've seen.
Oh, I'm Susan Drew, and I live at 37770 Highway 26, which is kind of catty corner from Les Schwab Tires. I've been there on the highway for a long time. I actually grew up there when it was narrow, and when I came back in '97, I've seen a lot of the changes. And so I just have, I was really stunned when I received the notice in the mail. It just like, wow, if somebody was going to think, what to put in that field, why would it be that kind of a thing? A 4-story high. And I haven't really seen 4-story things in the city of Sandy, except down in below on Reuben Lane, where they have those new kinds of apartments. But anyway, 4 stories from my house, I can see, the sunrise and sometimes the mountain. And I think that at least part of the year that a 4-story thing would make a difference to me personally, just looking out the window. But I wondered why. Tried to read as much of the studies reports as I could, but it said the Sandy staff had said initially that a full traffic impact study wasn't required. And then when I read the ODOT report, I wasn't clear whether that was a full report or not. But it seemed to me the one thing that they should consider, which people have addressed before already, is when somebody's trying to get onto Highway 26, any direction, just turn right, left, or whatever, how much of a wait time do they have? And I think, I see all kinds of things on the highway there, and I have seen wrecks, and I just kind of wonder sometimes if ODOT or the city is waiting for some fatalities to happen before they take it seriously what the traffic situation is there.
you know, one of the really big trees in my neighbor's yard was bashed into and a chunk of it taken out a year or so ago. And other nights there've been cars that fly onto the island in the middle and, you know, sat there all night because they couldn't get off the island. And I know they're trying to make traffic move quickly. I don't think it should be 40 miles an hour right there. What I hear is when trucks especially are coming west, and if they get the light at Bluff Road and they come roaring along, I'm probably going faster than 40 miles an hour. And then when they have to stop at the Safeway light, you can hear them using their Jake brakes, which Sandy doesn't post any restrictions on. And it's an offensive sort of noise. So anyway, I just think that they should study, you should study how much wait time people are idling, trying to dart out onto those things. And then the ODOT study that I did read, where it says on the south side of the highway, because all those driveways are not in meeting standard compliance, or meeting the standard of distance between driveways, I guess, that, well, okay, for that reason, then it's probably okay to have it not meet standard on the north side of the highway in a really congested area. And I just don't think that's a good idea. I mean, I just can't think that anything's a very good idea that makes that stretch of road harder for people to deal with. I mean, I see people come down the up and they go up the down, big trucks, all kinds of things do already in that area because it's just so difficult to deal with. And, you know, you have to go down and up and around. Sometimes I go down and around and come up Reuben if the traffic's really bad so that I can get onto the highway. And even if it's just 42 units, I think that's kind of a bit much. But another big concern of mine is the trees being removed. And it seems like you should not grant those variances. Trees, you know, Sandy's tree canopy, they've been losing it for the last 25 years, you know, by the hundreds of trees. And even though little street tree kind of things are planted and there are things planted, it doesn't really replace the canopy, you know, that we've had. And especially these bigger trees that are providing invaluable shade and, you know, air quality improvement. So anyway, I wanted to say, in terms of living near Les Schwab tires, and nothing against them, I've kind of gotten used to it, but you can hear hydraulic noises and other things coming from there. It just seemed like such a weird place to put an apartment building, you know, right close to where they're, you know, they're always working really hard there. They do so much day and night, 7 days a week. And anyway, and so the other thing is I didn't see any, I saw one comment in their lighting that said they would try to have the lights, you know, for their parking lots and whatever pointing downward, but I didn't really see any mention of a dark sky provision, how to meet it or not. And they mentioned Sandy style lighting, and I don't really know what that is either. But and then in terms of the Katsoulis home and the other homes, yeah, in looking at these plans, and I imagine the city doesn't require it, but you look at those plans and the entire property there is just a blank square. It doesn't even show that there's a home there. You know, it doesn't show anything about the adjacent properties, that these are people with their homes living there. And in the case of them, of course, historic home. I mean, it was, you know, been there since long before I was around. And it's just offensive. I mean, it's just upsetting that these developers, they come in and they talk about, you know, how close can we cram this over here, and never talk about the fact that this is somebody's home where they may have a cat or a dog or a baby or a grandmother or something, you know, trying to to live there and to have a 4-story building. And the other question I just heard Emily saying is that, did the city pass something that stops new storage units in town? You guys are not replying to anything, but anyway, I don't know if that's true, then they certainly, it's just not, I mean, I guess the rules are the rules, right? You have to use the rules, but to have somebody get more storage units in this town, if you're trying to not have storage units, I'm opposed to that too. And anyway, so I thank you for your time, and I appreciate getting notified. I guess I'm living within so many houses, but I certainly hope I hope they don't have a 4-story thing go in there. So, and I hope they don't. I don't know why they can't. I thought both properties were owned by Paolas, so why can't they share, you know, the existing driveway and not remove as many trees? So that wasn't clear to me either. And thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Our role right now is to listen.
Okay, I'm sorry. I should ask my questions some other time.
The other testimony. See his hand raised. Sean,
Yeah, I can allow them to speak now.
okay, Sean.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. My name is Sean McCammon. I live at 37875 Meeker Street. My first concern is that I never received any information about this development in my mail. I got the news from my neighbors, from Denise at Paola's, and it is disheartening to see that kind of a development going in that small of an area with one way in and one way out. Does the fire department have any say about that? You're talking a 4-story unit that the Sandy fire doesn't even have a ladder truck to reach a 4-story unit. And that didn't seem like anything that was addressed. I feel for Elizabeth in the house next to her, because the trees, I do not trust that these trees will stay put when they say that they have to keep so many, because I live on the west and north side of the College Street development, and that developer took out every tree, 100-year-old cedars, 100-year-old pines. He took out every one but one. And they just shut him down for 6 months and fined him. But you know what? He made more money on the lumber than he did on the fine. So why not? So now there's a bare hill that has water running out of it, 30 gallons a minute, and nobody is addressing where, like Dennis said, where is all of that stormwater going to go? Where the dirt that they need to bring in? I don't trust that the trees are not going to be preserved. The driveway is a big concern with that many units coming and going. I agree with Dennis. I live on Meeker Street. Meeker Street is a cut-through street. The traffic is so bad coming through our 25-mile-an-hour street, because they use it from Bluff to get to University, to get out to Highway 26, to avoid the light at Bluff. And College Street and University, we were told that nobody would be parking on the street, and that street is littered with cars. They park in Dennis Marsh's property that's for sale there, but they're not supposed to. But, oh, I don't know, maybe half a dozen or dozen are parked over there right now. So nobody seems to be addressing what the city says that they're going to do about this. I don't see any action. So when you talk about 42 more units on top of storage units that are going to be used by the public, not just the people in the units, the traffic, it's already horrendous, and everybody's already talked about that. And there will be a fatality because I get out on that highway every day. I leave Mount Hood Athletic and I turn left on that every day. And I don't care what time of day it is a major backup. And I just agree with the other lady that just spoke about, I can't believe that ODOT has approved a one-way in, one-way out with all of that traffic. And again, it'll come back around onto Meeker, and they're already in the process of making a 3-story apartment complex on Meeker that backs up to the high school field with 33 parking spaces. And people are already parked on the street. So I have a lot of concerns. I would like to have had something sent to me. I don't know if it's because I'm on the north side of Meeker Street that I didn't get the notice, but I would have liked to have had, I just got the information just the other day. I would have liked to have had time to email something about the development that's going on and how unclear it all is. And I agree with Dennis when he says he needs more time to review this development. I don't know if Sandy Fire, I know that with the merger with Clackamas Fire, that seems to be kind of a sore spot with me too, because they are not capable of getting in that space with a fire truck. So I don't know, there's just a lot of issues that need to be brought up, and I just wanted to zoom in on, not that probably any of our concerns, you know, will be addressed, because of course the city of Sandy is going to push it through for more revenue, more tax dollars, more whatever. But yeah, I'm not happy about it either. It's 1.46 acres. It's a flag lot, for God's sake. And you're going to put 42 units in there on top of 65 storage units. That just seems ludicrous.
Jerry.
Can you wrap it up, Sean? You're starting.
That's it. That's all I got to say. I would like to have somebody send me information about the development to my home address.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any additional hands for opponent testimony, so we'll move on to neutral testimony. If you're neither in favor or opposed, and you just have a comment or a question or statement, raise your hand, either by phone or by Zoom.
I don't see anybody.
I don't see anybody either. Okay. From there, we'll move on to Emily for staff recap.
All right, I'll respond to a few and then turn it over to Kelly to see if he has anything additional to add. But just to address some of the height and use questions. So this is in the C2 general commercial zone, and both the proposed height and the proposed use comply with the code, as does the proposed parking. At least the number of spaces. There was an issue with the length of the spaces that's been incorporated as a proposed condition of approval, but the number of spaces on both the existing Pails lot and the proposed mixed-use development does comply. I believe the Palos lot, we did request additional analysis, and I haven't had a chance. I think a little was provided on the updated sheet, but that was not analyzed. But again, the height and the use are in compliance with the code. The applicant did submit a traffic letter, and that was reviewed by both the third-party transportation engineer and by ODOT, both of whom provided comments. And their comments are incorporated into the recommended conditions of approval in the staff report. The applicant also submitted a stormwater plan, which was reviewed by the city engineer, and any comments on that are also incorporated. And then let's see, lighting, they did submit a lighting plan. It would need to comply with our dark sky ordinance, which is chapter 1530 of the code. And I believe there are in the staff report some recommended conditions of approval related to that as well. The fire marshal did also review the plan and provided comments, which are also included in the staff report as proposed conditions of approval. And then I think, let's see, I think second to last point, we did send out notice. The applicant provides mailing labels for property owners within 500 feet of the two subject properties, and notice was sent to anybody within that distance. And then it was published in the paper, but we don't send it to beyond that 500 feet specifically. And then regarding the variance requests, so both the wall height and the tree removal, those are planning commission decisions, and as we included in the staff report, we are recommending that you do get more specific information from the applicant on the proposed wall height, and then the tree retention of whether to retain the existing landscape buffer and the mature existing trees, or to and then to relocate or to relocate the driveway and relocate the landscape buffer is up to the planning commission, really.
Yeah, the only things I would add is the traffic is reviewed. Emily and myself, as you know, don't review that. We leave that up to DKS Associates, who's our transportation engineer. So they reviewed it. That's included in a memo. I think it is, let's see here. It's Exhibit G. That's on the website. As Emily pointed out, ODOT also reviewed it. That's Exhibit I. The fire marshal also reviewed it. That's Exhibit N. And so to answer a few of those fire marshal questions, there is a turnaround for a fire truck proposed on the site. It's shown in the plan set. And then also due to the size of the building, I believe it has to be a fire suppression system in the building because it exceeds 3 stories. The other thing too is the Sandy Fire District. I'm not going to speak to their merger with Clackamas County. That's not my place to speak to that. But what I can say is they have an existing IGA with both Clackamas County and the city of Gresham to use their pump truck and to use their higher bucket truck. You know, response times and everything, that's not the planning department's job to kind of review that. It's really a service question for the fire district. So if anybody from the public has concerns about that, I would recommend speaking to the fire chief or the fire marshal about their service and their capability of serving any Sandy properties, not just this property that's being proposed for development. And then I think Emily touched upon the other items that I was going to touch upon. We can't do anything about the use. We can't do anything about the height. And if they meet the other code criteria, such as parking for the use, landscaping minimums, setbacks, if they meet all that stuff, it would be illegal for the city of Sandy to deny this application. And I know the planning commission understands that, but I want to make sure the public understands that it would actually be what's called a takings, and we would be sued in circuit court for damages. What I can say is I do agree with some of the testimony that some of the information was not complete. So some of the wall height stuff and some of the additional information. So I definitely agree. And I think the staff report did a really good job of highlighting these shortcomings of the proposal. So I do agree there's a lot of stuff to still sort out So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay, we will give applicants opportunity for rebuttal.
Hi there, guys. It's Mark Wilde again with State Street Homes. So Kelly and Emily did a pretty good job responding to most of those, but I just thought I might go through it a little bit just as the owner and applicant and touch on some of these as well. So first I want to start by saying that as developer builders, we're very much empathetic to the impacts that these projects have on neighbors, and I do understand how that can feel intrusive to have a large building like that next to your home. As developers, we identify communities that are close by us, that we're familiar with, that have a need for housing. And we put a lot of effort into that to make sure that the need is there. And Sandy is, as you guys, most of you are aware, is a fast growing community with a lot of demand for housing. And that's our job, is to do our best to locate appropriate sites and propose projects that meet the code requirements with as little variances as possible. So as Kelly mentioned, the building that we've proposed does meet all the code requirements. We aren't asking for any variances on height or setback, or unit count, parking. We worked pretty hard to design a building that fit within that and met the design requirements for the city of Sandy. There's a lot of talk about the traffic and the impact on Highway 26. I definitely understand that. I live right off of Highway 26 as well here in Boring, so I'm very familiar with the traffic and how each project impacts that. We did, as mentioned, provide a traffic impact letter. We did have traffic engineers look at this. ODOT wanted to see that as well, and that was provided. There was some talk about the walls, the tall walls, and I'm not familiar with the final height of those. When I'm done here, I'll give Mercedes a chance to speak if she has any of the latest information on the height. But the walls that we're proposing are ultra block walls, so they're not concrete pour walls. And in most cases, we don't need to trespass on any neighbors' properties to build those walls. If we did, if for any reason we needed to access a neighbor's property during that construction, of course, we'd be required to negotiate an access easement with that neighbor for construction purposes, and it would be up to that neighbor to agree to that or disagree. And if they chose to disagree, we'd have to find a different way to set that wall. But we do, since this is just a design review, I don't believe that all of the engineering for this project was submitted, but I did hear some concerns about drainage with the retaining wall. And of course, we're providing a full comprehensive civil engineer design with this project that provides for all stormwater drainage, including the wall and all of the impervious areas for the building and parking. And all of that is treated as per required by the city of Sandy and the state. And then of course, it'll make its way to the storm system after being treated and retained. I heard something about the soil import that was going to be imported, and as we build that site up for parking, we'll do that with a combination of rock, and then if we can locate native local soil, we do that during the dry season, and that's engineered. It's put down in layers and engineered so as to not settle and to not damage any neighboring properties. Lots of talk about the trees, and I totally agree with that. I very much love trees, and my property out here in Boring, I have a lot of trees as well. And it's I understand how that can feel like an impact when trees are being removed. We do our very best with every project to propose removing as few trees as possible. This one is particularly difficult because of the access that ODOT is asking us. And again, we don't really have any say in that. ODOT has final authority to approve any indentures of moving access, and this is where they're pretty firm in that they want this access. And so we're trying to, of course, balance the requirement of the state and Highway 26 and yet meet the requirements of the city of Sandy for retaining trees and landscape areas. And that can be a hard balance sometimes, but I think what we're proposing here is the best compromise to meet the state's requirements for that access, and then do our best to mitigate the damage environmentally. There was some talk about the fire review, and yes, it might be confusing, but with the project that we have proposed does meet the requirement for fire apparatus access, as well as a turnaround for a full-size fire truck to be able to go into the site in the case of any kind of fire emergency and also leave the site. On top of that, of course, this project will be fully sprinkled, and required hydrant access will be in place. And again, I think we kind of talked about that relocating in the driveway, but that is where ODOT has asked us to put the driveway, and it is a two-way traffic in and out. And again, the traffic engineer looked at that and didn't see, I didn't see that there was any concern about that being enough access for this particular building, even with the commercial storage units that were being proposed. That's all I really have. Again, I appreciate the neighbors taking the time to show up and look at this project and offer their comments. And we, of course, always take those very seriously as we move forward with the project. I'll give Mercedes Studio 3 a chance if there's anything she wants to add. She might not, unless she has some more information on the wall height. Otherwise, that's it for me.
This is Mercedes Butchess with Studio 3 Architecture. I don't have any additional comments other than what Mark has just laid out. I do know that Kelly had raised her hand, and she's a civil engineer for our proposal. So I will pass it to her to have comment regarding the retaining walls and their heights and whatnot.
Yes, thank you, Mercedes. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Kelly Grover. I'm with Furwood Design Group. Address 359 East Historic Columbia River Highway, Troutdale, Oregon 97060. And we are supporting the project as the civil engineers, and wanted to comment primarily on the wall heights. So as Emily in her thorough report, good job, Emily, pointed out that the site plan has some call outs that are different from the grading sheets, and the grading sheets are the more accurate reflection. The site plan just had a couple of notes that didn't get updated to cross correlate with the data of the wall heights. So the grading, the cross sections and the grading plans are the more accurate pieces of information that reflecting the wall heights there. Additionally, as Mark had mentioned, the walls are likely going to be an ultra block type of wall that is constructed from our side of the project. Will not be trespassing on anybody's property, and these are all designed by structural engineers, and retaining the fill and collecting any waters that may get behind those walls is all taken into consideration in the design process, and how we manage and discharge that water is all accounted for. You know, the plans that have been submitted are more planning level at this point. And so once we get into the engineering and we work out the specifics of the engineering design and all of the kind of nitty gritty particulars, then that all kind of gets processed a little bit further and taken into further account at that time. And then I did want to just comment real quick on the entry or the approach from ODOT. That specific point was told or kind of recommended through ODOT. I agree that it would be nice to have those trees stay. And maybe there would be some opportunity to maybe go back to ODOT and question on that location, but that just throw that out there for that. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I will just speak to the applicant. We could right now close the public hearing. If we did that, we can't talk to the applicant or anybody other than staff. And we all find that we often have simple little questions of the applicant. And in order to ask that question, we have to reopen the motion to reopen the public hearing, ask the question, get the yes or no answer, and then have a motion to close the public hearing. And it's been our tradition to, rather than do that, we keep the public hearing open, but only for the planning commission to direct questions to the applicant, not for the applicant to offer questions to us. So if you are understanding that, we'll move ahead with our discussion time.
This is Mark Willie, State Street Homes. I understand that provision and that sounds agreeable for us as the applicant.
Okay, we may or may not ask you anything, but this just makes it run smoother if we want to.
Okay, we understand that. Thank you.
Are we okay to go into discussion? All right. Initial thoughts, comments?
Speaking of, I actually do have one question for the applicant.
Okay.
Obviously with the new building, there's going to be a lot of, or more traffic heading from the front of the property to the back. And the Paola's lot will move kind of from the side, largely in the back. Is there a door in the back of Paola's, or is there a plan to safely move customers from the front to the back without? So it looks like the only sidewalk would be kind of on the east part of that driveway. So they'd have to cross kind of that thoroughfare through there twice. Is there a separate way around or a separate walkway kind of in the plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we are with the driveway will be delineated that goes, and I believe it has a curb or some kind of barrier, and I'll let Mercedes add to that if I forget, but there's a door on the side and in the front of Paola's, and there is one in the back. Neither us or Paola's is proposing any change for access to their building, but there is a delineated walk area separate from our shared drive that will have a physical barrier to keep that separate, and then obviously offer safety to anybody that's walking to that side door. And I'm not sure if there's anything that Mercedes would add to that, but that's what I know of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You'd have one hand raised from Commissioner Lee.
All right, Commissioner Lee.
Yes, I feel we still need more thorough information that will alleviate the concerns of the neighbors and also be more clear in how construction details will be administered. The removal of the trees and the lack of an alternative landscaping plan concern me. Questions have been brought up about ODOT, and I think further discussion could be had there. So I would request that we have additional time to complete the information and then be able to review it in light of having all that we need to respond.
Okay. Always have to ask this question. And we have our attorney on?
Are you asking about a continuance?
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh is on.
How does Josh, how do continuances happen? My understanding is we can't arbitrarily do a continuance, can we?
As long as you have time left in the schedule with the 120 days, you could absolutely just continue the hearing.
Okay.
So just so you know, we will not have a hearing in March.
I mean, a meeting?
Meeting, yeah.
Okay,
So if you do decide to continue it, it'd be the end of April. It'd be 2 months from now, essentially.
and where's that on the? 120?
I don't know, but there's no ability because of the staffing situation that I explained earlier in the meeting to hold the meeting before then. That would be the earliest I'd be able to hold a meeting would be April 24th would be the next meeting availability. And because of budget and because of me being down a third of my staff, there's no ability to meet before then. Now the 120-day rule, we could ask the applicant to toll the clock. So basically pull or pause the 120-day clock. Or we could just proceed. The 120-day clock currently ends on April 28th. So if you hold a meeting on the 24th and make a decision that night, hypothetically, we could issue the decision by the 28th, but because of my limited staffing, I really doubt that would ever happen.
Well, there also has to be a window for appeal.
That is correct, Chair. Yeah.
So we would be pushing it.
If the applicant
If the
doesn't
applicant
agree to,
doesn't
yes.
agree to stay. I sort of felt the same way reading through just the recommendation, well, it's the whole staff report. Seemed like every page I turned, this wasn't clear in the applicant's papers. This wasn't there. We needed this, and so forth. And Emily did a yeoman's job in, putting them into the final conditions. There's a lot there. Let me ask Mark, Will, did you understand what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I understand what the discussion is about.
Okay. To our attorney, can I flat out ask Mark about staying the clock?
Yeah, you can ask that question.
Okay. So my question to you, Mark, is would you be willing to toll the clock for a while? Because we realize if we continue as you heard Kelly say, we could hear it again in April, or we could continue it in April, but that really puts our backs to the wall on the calendar for the 120 days.
Okay, yeah, I definitely understand the request. So I've got a little bit of a problem there in that I'm one of 3 principals for this company, and I didn't come prepared to make a decision of that size, and I'm not really authorized because I'm not even I'm not a majority shareholder of the company. So I don't know that I actually could make that decision in this hearing right now. I'm just want to make sure I understand. So commission just isn't feeling like enough detailed information has been provided tonight for you guys to be able to make a comprehensive decision based on, because the planning department has obviously recommended approval for this project with their conditions, and we're in agreement with their conditions. So my preference would be for us to go ahead and move forward and have the commission rule on that if we can. But I'm definitely sensitive to hearing if there's some issues with that. And then I guess I would have to try to make some phone calls to see if other stakeholders would be in agreement with me making that call here tonight.
We've done this before. You could pause the meeting for 5 or 10 minutes if you can make a phone call now, or you could proceed with the hearing, or, I mean, it's really up to you, but we have done that before, I remember.
Yeah. I'm open for doing that. Just we can take a break anyway. We'll just take a quick recess and give you time. Mark, is it even feasible that you could make some calls and get an answer to that question?
I can sure try. So again, I asked, there was kind of several parts of that question. So I just want to make sure I'm clear before I try calling anybody, but with what's been provided in the proposal and the staff's recommendation for approval, the opinion of the commission is that you guys still don't feel like you have enough information in front of you to find on these tonight and to make a ruling.
Yeah, I think that would be accurate. I bet, especially Emily's showing us the thing that they just got a couple weeks ago, and comment that they haven't had the time to dive into it deeply. And we hadn't seen it before tonight either.
Okay, I understand.
And we're not talking about a lot of time that the clock needs to be held.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. That would be helpful to know how much time we're talking about.
Well, if 20 goes to 2 months from now.
You would typically toll the clock for the time period between the hearings. I mean, unless Josh has some other recommendation behind.
If it
Yeah, I don't know if you can do this math on the fly, Kelly, but the question would be if the planning commission can make a decision at that April meeting, and if there is an appeal, and the scheduling of when that would be able to go to city council and making sure you can make that final decision before the clock runs out.
Yeah, it's highly unlikely because of our biennial budget happening right now, and just my staffing. So if we don't toll the clock for the entire 2 months, I think it's too problematic. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's probably it would be reasonable to say that we would make a decision in April.
Well, if the applicant agreed to toll the clock, then basically it would just be paused from now until April 24th. Yeah, then you really would need to make a decision that night.
Right.
And then I would issue an order within 2 weeks after that. And then the applicant could either be satisfied with your decision in the order as we typically do, or they could appeal it, and that would give me enough time to get it before city council.
And if we delay, if the applicant has changes that we're in question of, would that be the time to submit the changes before the April 24th meeting so we could review any differences, that questions that we had that Emily brought up?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. So how we've typically done this in the past is we would, if we delayed the decision until April 24th, we need that amount of time anyways, because this is how it works. And that's a great point, is the applicant would probably have about 2.5 to 3 weeks to get the additional information all put together and give it to me. And then I would have 3 or 4 weeks to write up a revised staff report. And then you'd have about a week or two to review that.
So some of these gray areas, we would have
correct.
a little more clarification on.
But yeah,
decision.
you're spot on that. Even if March is not even practical at this point anyways, because if they submit something to me, I wouldn't have time to write anything up for
Right.
your review. So really 2 months is needed anyways for that exact reason.
Okay, I'm just curious.
No, that's a great point.
And if we do toll the clock, it would be, we need to let the applicant know what we're looking for
Certainly.
further, so that Mark doesn't walk off wondering, I have no idea what it is that they're looking for.
Yes, that's 100% correct. And I would need to know that too, so I can work with the applicant to make sure they submit what you need for review. So yes, we would definitely need to make a decision on that tonight, what you'd be looking for. The other thing I do want to bring up is the ODOT piece. I just want to be very clear with everybody that Mark is 100% right, that the indenture of access is controlled by ODOT, but your decision is the governing decision. And then if the applicant doesn't like that, or ODOT doesn't like that, they can appeal. But so usually with like an indenture of access, you would make the condition flexible enough that the applicant, the city, and ODOT can work together on the specific location of the driveway. But I just want to make it very clear that you're the land use authority in this decision-making process, not ODOT. And Josh, step in if I said anything wrong there.
On those rare occasions when we can. Rule over ODOT. All right, well, let's do an official recess give Mark, do you understand what you would be asking your other principals?
So yeah, if we want to take a short recess, I'll talk to all the stakeholders and see what I can come up with, if that's okay with the commissioners.
Yeah, we'll give a 10-minute break for you to do that.
Okay.
All right,
Appreciate it. Thank you.
back at 8:33.
Thank you.
My mistake. There we go.
Okay.
You're unmuted.
We're back at 8:33 after a 10-minute recess. And maybe Mark, since we were giving you time to make some calls, anything to report?
Yeah, I do. I spoke to a couple of the other stakeholders. I had a quick question that kind of helps us maybe make this decision for maybe either Emily or I'm not sure if I can't remember if I'm allowed to ask questions, but it'd be a question for Emily or Kelly it's a permitting question, timing.
I mean, for the purposes of this, yeah, you can ask a question.
Okay, so I get the biggest push for us in this project was getting to the point of getting our grading permit by summer or earliest fall, because of the amount of fill that needs to happen on that site to build that retaining wall and the fill. And so I'm not sure if there's going to be a mechanism for us to get that permit separately, because it sounds like we could get through even if we continue this for 2 months, probably enough time to get through land use approval. But our biggest concern is not having time to get that grading permit to do that work. And if we miss that weather window, that actually pushed us into the following summer. Is there anything you guys can help me with on that?
Yeah, you can work on the grading permit and the plans and everything if you want to take the risk of moving forward with that. We can't stop you from doing that, but you cannot submit to our office until after the final order is made and you have a copy of that. So say if there was a decision on April 24th, say we get the final order that Chair Crosby signs 2 weeks after that, then after that, you could likely submit for a grading permit in early to mid-May if you have approval, but you would not be able to submit for it in the meantime.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you're saying that would be at our risk if, in fact, after the approval of the commissioners in April, the application was still denied after that, or land use was denied, then we would have done some dirt moving on a project that wasn't approvable. Am I understanding
No,
that?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying you can't do anything on the site until you have your land use approval. What I'm saying is you could work on moving forward with your building permit and your grading plans. Like you could move forward with doing more engineering work and with your architect and everything else. You just can't send them to our office until after the land use decision has been issued. So no, you cannot move earth at this point.
Okay, yeah, and I totally understand that. So how long will it take to turn, and I know you can't answer this directly, but how long would it take to turn around a grading permit after land use approval? What would that timeline look like?
It depends on how complete the permit is. So
Right.
if the permit's really well done, then it might be 3 weeks. If the permit is not done very well, then we'll send comments back to you and then you'll have to revise the plan set. And that goes for the civil plans and also the building plans as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so it is feasible then that if we had a really good design to hand you guys immediately upon land use approval, we might be able to turn a grading permit around and we wouldn't miss our weather window then.
Correct. I would agree.
Okay. Well, I think with that, I definitely am a little disappointed, but it doesn't feel like I have much of a choice here. Again, I'll reiterate what I'm hearing from the commission is that you guys don't feel like we've provided enough information on some of these items that you guys can even rule on this file or this proposal. And so I think with that, I'm not seeing a lot of choices here, but to agree to the stay on the 120-day clock.
So is that Josh? Can I ask
Yeah.
Josh something? Josh, can you speak to whether that's sufficient or if we need something in writing after the meeting?
It does have to be in writing and you want to specify the exact dates, but I think there's some risk to moving forward without that in writing yet, but I think it's probably pretty minimal. And just get it as soon as you can after the meeting.
And that's, this will seem, what I'm going to say is going to seem kind of odd, but that is assuming that we have a motion, that we motion the commission to continue. And
correct.
Hasn't been nailed down. right now. Or yet. Because one thing I think would be helpful to us is if we went through, as we talked about earlier, went through probably the conditions of approval. And were to kind of sketch out what it is that we would want the applicant to provide for us come for the April meeting, that there's also the possibility that we would say, okay, we're okay with moving ahead. I mean, there's still the opportunity, the opening for us to make a decision tonight, is what I'm saying. But what I'd like us to do is to just say, okay, if we do continue it, what do we want to see come to us that we don't have tonight? Because that's the reason for the continuance. So with that, let's focus our discussion there. And why don't we, unless somebody has a different thought, just kind of look at the variances that have been requested. I think some of the things probably would not make a difference. The thing that I thought of was the lighting report. If they hadn't submitted a complete lighting report for staff to look at, but we can make it but it's conditioned that they do that. Are we okay with that without us waiting for it to be submitted to staff, staff's reviewing it and giving us their comments? Variances we definitely have to discuss. Anybody have?
I agree with you. I can just kind of start by the things that, if it's all right, the things that I'm kind of looking for as I go through this report, because I think a lot of them, like you were saying, I can kind of go with, staff recommendation, but there are kind of three big things. The analysis of the site plan, that's not necessarily maybe from the applicant, but us as far as the new submitted plan. It seems to me like, we were looking for a bigger setback on the south side of the property, and then all of a sudden it was there. We were looking for longer parking spaces, and all of a sudden they were there, but nothing apart from things moving around seemed to change. Is that all still adding up? Where did that extra, feet come from? The same on kind of the Paola side. There's an updated kind of landscape and recreation plan. I don't think that was addressed so far. What we've talked about today, where there was that piece of land kind of on, I think it was the northwest corner, that was supposed to be lawn that disappeared, looked like for more parking lot. Where did that go? The code also specifies that the multifamily residential development shall provide usable recreation areas for developments containing more than 5 dwellings, but they're calculating over 2,000 square feet of landscape area as recreation area. Can that qualify? How does that necessarily fit in? So kind of an updated recreation plan that kind of takes into account all these different things. And then kind of a better plan for me to kind of visualize how those retaining walls are going to work. I couldn't even tell until tonight, how far they stretched across the property. Was it a 4 foot, was it 4 foot wide, or was it, 50 foot wide? I couldn't really tell from what I was looking at and how tall it is in the different places. And so I want to be able to see those, because that'll help me with 3 of the variances there, and kind of the other 2 will help me with the site plan, or with the design plan, excuse me.
First one you mentioned before the recreation plan, what was that again?
The analysis of the site plan, the new site plan that we got.
So for the retaining wall, just so I'm clear when I communicate, you're looking for more information on the exact heights, so there's no conflict between the 2 plans, and then also the design of the retaining wall. Like-
Don't just the heights, but where it's gonna be out on the property, how far, so I can see what properties it's affecting, where is it at on the different heights, those types of things.
I think one of the things that came to my mind when they were talking about the wall was the architect said it would likely be composed of, I would like to know, not a likely perhaps, let's get a more concrete sort of a more commitment as to what it's actually going to be, because I think that's going to make a difference.
So retaining wall design and materials.
Yes,
Okay.
clarification on materials.
And if I could add maybe to my, sorry, the last piece is maybe location of the mechanical, electrical communication equipment, especially if that's going to be sited on the south side of the property in the nature walk area.
I guess another thing that came to mind, and I'm not familiar with storage units and what hours they operate, and if that's even an issue, but would public have 24-hour access in and out of that facility to go to the storage units? It could impact the homes around and that sort of thing. I don't know if there are conditions on that. I haven't been able to go through my whole binder yet. So, no, but that just came to mind. If there's 42 people coming and going at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we may not have any say in that, how the business runs based on zoning, but it did come to mind.
Any of our commissioners on Zoom have comments? Since I can't see faces, I'm always at a disadvantage.
I had mentioned earlier about the landscaping. I still have an issue with the trees. And I think that another discussion with ODOT could be in order.
I agree. I have an issue with the trees, and then I need to understand the height of the walls.
Okay, what are our issues with the trees?
I'm not comfortable relying on the neighbors being responsible for the green space or the buffer. We have codes that say each piece of property is supposed to have a responsibility for a tree buffer, and I don't see that they're taking any responsibility for that.
I mean, Commissioner Pullen is correct that each property is supposed to have a certain percentage of their frontage be a landscaping maintenance corridor, as Emily explained. And I think what Commissioner Pullen is saying, which is correct, is that if you push that all up on the Payless Pizza Barn site, then in effect, the flag lot for the applicant has zero or very small amount of landscape management area.
Right. And there are two pieces of property.
Correct. And
There will always be two pieces.
there'll be two different owners, correct?
And for what it's worth, that's ODOT's full reasoning for moving the driveway to begin with, is because of these disputes between owners. And if one of them does something that the other one doesn't.
I mean, that, I don't want to speak out of turn, but we have common access agreements that are created through easements and plats every year.
Oh,
Yeah, so I
think that they should be, I mean, I agree.
Yeah,
I think that there's other ways around it besides dividing it in half, 100%. But that was ODOT's reasoning, is that, owners don't get along.
Yeah, and that was an ODOT suggestion.
Correct.
They cover the whole state, so for every good story we have, they have a bad story.
I mean, what I would say is typically how we deal with these things, that when there's an easement created, if one owner decides to block the other one, that's a civil issue between those two property owners. The city would stay out of that. There's nothing, even though, so just to play devil's advocate to ODOT's comment, even with the current proposal with the indenture of access on the common property line, what's to stop one of the property owners from blocking the other one? It'd be the same situation, and then it would be a conflict between the two owners. Once the easement is signed and recorded by both parties, it doesn't really matter if it's on the common lot line or not. So I don't really agree with ODOT's understanding of how easements work in this particular case.
And the
And
lot,
I was even wondering if the property has been purchased or not yet, or if that easement has been defined.
So I believe, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they did submit something into the record showing that there's a recorded easement between the two properties for the location, for the driveway location as proposed. However, I will say, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, but you know, you could always terminate that easement and create a new one. There'd be nothing from stopping them from doing that.
Yes, I think that's correct.
okay, I want to look at those tree. Try and find the specific conditions on the trees. I'm looking on this kind of random condition. I think these are the conditions of approval number 5. This is on page 57. Update the tree retention plan and planting plan based on the following required considerations. And it says consider discussing removal of trees with adjacent property owner rather than protecting this low value species. It's just funny to have a condition that says consider doing something. I'm trying to remember after having read everything. It seemed like, Emily, you had some proposals of a different take on retaining the trees. And you wrap those into conditions, is that correct?
Yeah, so what I tried to do is prepare like as comprehensive of a staff report as possible with kind of the moving pieces. So, you know, there are some ifs, right? Like if we go with the relocated driveway, then, you know, a bunch of the trees are removed. If we don't, then I think three trees could potentially be retained. The other moving piece is that the right of way, I believe, is not sufficiently wide there, and that ODOT will require some additional right of way dedication. So some of those trees may be removed, but I believe 2 of them are in poor condition or undersized, and only one of them is potentially, or could be a retention tree, and even that one might be one of the 10-inch ones. I think it's the 10-inch palm that could potentially be affected by the sidewalk widening. So there's quite a few moving pieces, but I did my best to kind of try and create conditions in case you made a decision tonight that would address, like, you know, where mitigation trees could go, where that landscape required landscape management corridor buffer along Highway 26 could go, and things like that.
To the planning commissioners, how do you feel about part of the proposal of what Emily did was to kind of, in a sense, on the retainment requirement. Is it 14 inches? She kind of proposed lowering that a bit. That there were some trees that require to retain those, even though they didn't actually meet it. What were your thoughts on that? And a couple of them were in fair condition, or they weren't.
I'm not against alternating trees. I guess is how we could look at that. But I do definitely, we need to consider that there's some responsibility for keeping some trees on that land.
It would be helpful to us, I would think, if the applicant were to nail down the location of that driveway. Then we have clarity in what we're dealing with.
I know we're kind of working to extend, but at least from what I've heard, it sounds like maybe at least on driveway location and keeping trees, we could maybe take a temperature to see where we're at with that to help them out to kind of get us, because that's really the difference is, right, keep trees, move driveway. And I don't know, I think that I have a feeling that we are all maybe in consensus with how we would like the applicant to maybe move forward and work on things with that, at least with that particular variance.
What's your feeling?
I have a feeling that we're all in favor of keeping the trees and keeping the current living location as it is, and kind of working with ODOT to work to keep more trees and keep the entrance closer to where it's at.
I agree.
Any of our Zoom commissioners, did you hear?
I agree also.
I also agree.
And I would too. Basically, what we say is put the driveway where you can retain the most trees.
Yeah, and keep the most buffer.
Favor trees for the location of the driveway. I think that's going to help in more ways than one.
I mean, it's going to really simplify the staff report and final decision. Like tremendously if you go through the stat. I mean, I think that's what you're getting at. Anyway, yeah. So is the commission just for the applicant to hear? Are you basically saying that that's going to be one of the expectations moving forward? Is the driveway close to where it currently is and retaining the majority of those trees?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
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 Anything else that you feel, any of you feel that you want to see that would be like new information to us?
Yes, sorry, I came up with a couple more.
Oh, excellent. I appreciate it.
On the first line of kind of the trees and the neighbor property line, there was a mention of was taking, I don't know if it was lighting or electrical conduit, something along the property line there. I guess this might be a moot point if we're no longer moving that driveway that close, but disturbing the tree root zone for the neighboring trees in there. And so I guess if we're moving the driveway, maybe that's not necessarily needed anymore, but I was before kind of this conversation looking for information on how to protect those trees. But then kind of separate from the trees, I think there was also, this one's probably an easy one. I'd like to see, there was mention that the first floor was missing kind of the articulation and some of the sandy style design aspects that the other floors had. That would be nice to see. And then I had a question for staff on that. The code requires that the primary pedestrian entrances are covered. What qualifies it as a primary? Is it the one that the building says, hey, this is the main entrance, or is it likely to be other ones folks would use? Because I noticed that the two staircases for the upper levels didn't have, the doorway to the outside didn't have any pedestrian cover. They were just kind of doorways there, and kind of what the requirements would be there.
It should be 5 feet over any of the entrances, 5 feet covered area.
Okay. Yeah, those two staircases leading up to the upper levels did not have any cover.
We're just looking for in the conditions, the thing you mentioned about articulation of relief. Everybody's seen it, knows where it is, or if Emily's got your conditions memorized.
I think it would have been one of the earlier ones.
I know the articulation is definitely in there. It's probably in condition A under update the elevations.
I guess what it would be. See, but I don't have to really.
It's A2A.
Okay, articulate elevations, all four ground levels. Meeting the wall plane, okay. So this wasn't in the original plans. It's now a condition. The applicant has verbally said, we agree with all your conditions. So are we comfortable with that level, or do you actually want to see those things on paper?
Personally, I like to see them on paper. I think it's what we've asked for from other applicants. I mean, at least in the last couple that I've done, I haven't been here that long, but so correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what we've asked for from others.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, and I would agree, especially in under B, it says, if this cannot be accomplished, the applicant will need to apply for an adjustment or variance. So if they can't get it done, they're right back where we started from.
Yes, and because it's the Sandy style element, they would have to come back before the commission.
Yeah. So I would add that to what we would want to see. 2A, B, C, 2. Although the apartment director in the lobby, that would necessarily be in the plans.
Yeah, just so you know, the majority of apartments in Sandy, I think actually all of them, with the exception of maybe one building that I'm aware of, they're more garden apartments, so the entries are all from the exterior of the building. This will be one of the first, if not the first, apartment complex in the city limits that the entry will be internal to the building. So that's why the apartment directory is inside the building instead of your traditional setup in a garden apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are saying you would like to see updated elevations for your review in April?
Yes.
Okay.
Specifically addressing condition number 2, A2.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Specifically referencing condition of approval A2, which is a section talking about.
Got it.
Actually, we'd be happy with anything else too in the conditions, but
yes.
On the trees, we discussed that to relocate or to nail down the location of the driveway to favor the most trees. So,
And Commissioner Wagner said to move the utility undergrounding basically to the west in alignment with the driveway to keep it away from the additional trees. Which makes sense. If
yeah, and that was, Emily mentioned that. You know, kept saying, yeah, if you get too close, well, how you know, until you put it there.
Right.
On paper. Okay, did you get his comments, the original 4 or 5 things for what we were looking for?
Do you want me to read what I have?
Yeah, why don't you do that and I'll compare it with your notes and mine and everybody else's.
Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of read through my list here. So Commissioner Wagner asked for additional analysis of the site plan, including a larger setback to the south property line, additional square footage for parking spaces, updated recreation plan for the common outdoor area, additional information on retaining wall heights and how they are designed, and location of mechanical and electrical equipment. Commissioner Ramsayer would like additional information on the retaining wall design and materials, an hour of operation for the storage units. Commissioner Lee would like to see the landscaping maintained and for tree retention. Commissioner Poulin would like more information on retaining wall heights, additional landscaping along the flag lot, and additional discussions with ODOT. Chairman Crosby then asked for additional questions about tree retention. He then asked the other commissioners if they would be open to approving retention of some trees below 11 inches DBH. Commissioner Poulin agreed that she is open to alternative tree retention sizes, but that the applicant is responsible for tree retention. Commissioner Wagner asked for the temperature on driveway location. All commissioners agreed that they want tree retention along Highway 26 and for the driveway to be located at its existing location. Commissioner Wagner would also like undergrounding utilities to limit impacts on trees to the property to the east, and would also like additional articulation on the ground floor of the building. Commissioner Wagner and the other commissioners agreed that they'd like to see updated elevations for the commission review in April, specifically referencing condition of approval A2. That's what I have so far.
You did good. Did you miss anything?
I think you got it, because I think the only thing is kind of those entrance covers would be considered as part of the first floor articulation, maybe. So, yep.
Anything else?
I remember reading about the utilities and having a shielding, but I've been trying to find it and I can't recall if that was a condition that was already listed.
I can answer that a little bit. So there's two different code sections in the design review chapter 1790, and the commercial one has them screened from public rights of way, but the one for multifamily has them screened from public rights of way and private walkways. So most of it would be required to be screened, but the one that's in the commercial section doesn't include, I think, communication equipment. And so there was an additional recommendation that we had in there that you require the utilities to be screened, like, communication, electrical and mechanical, like specify that be screened from the public, from the private walkways as well. But that should be in the conditions list.
Thank you, Emily.
Any other final comments? Otherwise, we take a motion to continue the hearing. We have to, when we do a continuation, we must continue it to a date certain. In this case, it was April 24th.
Let me just double check that that's the date before we have a procedural error here. That is a Monday, and that is the fourth Monday. Yes, April 24th. Okay.
And my question to our attorney, is that with that continuance, we would just pick it up with our discussion? Or do we have to allow more public testimony?
What it sounds like you're wanting to do is continue the hearing so that you can have additional information presented and consider that information. So you would want to take additional public testimony at that time as well, so people can respond to that new information.
Very good.
Show up again that night.
And feel Kelly's got it. We'll have a motion to continue to April 24, 2023.
I move that we continue the hearing until April 24th, 2023.
I move we continue the hearing to April 24th, 2023.
Okay, Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue this hearing. And pick it up on April 24, 2023. We'll go ahead with a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Wegener,
Aye.
Commissioner Renser,
Agree.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes,
Commissioner Pullen,
Yes,
Commissioner Hook,
Yes.
and Chairman Crosby.
Yes. Right. See everybody back. Nothing else on our agenda tonight. Declare us adjourned.
At 9:09.
9:09, yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Sooner than I expected.
Thank you all for coming.